Man, oh man, oh man. You guys are going to enjoy this episode. I say this every time, but I mean, just a dynamite episode. Got the, the ability to meet this gentleman. He's just super fantastic. Again, lengthy episode here. It went almost an hour, but I think we could have gotten 2 to 3 hours, to be honest with you. And time flies when you're having fun. You guys are just going to love this episode. A lot of wisdom here. Just a really, really cool story as well, but just a lot of tips and book recommendations. So many book recommendations that he made that our team, me, our leadership team, all our team members here have read, and we believe in them. So just really cool to chat with Dr. Pirooz Zia with Unify. You guys are going to really, really enjoy this conversation. All right, Dr. Z, I appreciate you joining us, man. I mean, it's, the first time I talked to you, immediately within 5 minutes probably, I thought, we got to have him on the podcast as a guest. Two reasons. First off, you're very eloquent in how you speak. You're a really, really good communicator in my mind. But also just, you have a really cool story, man. You've just done a lot of cool things. So I want to start before dentistry, right? Before dentistry here in America. Let's just go back before that and just unpack your story, kind of growing up and then making your way over here to America and starting great practice of dentistry.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor to be here. Born in Iran, a country that more people know about than before, given the current news and the situation. When I was about 10, we had ourselves a major revolution. It wasn't a revolution light, it was a proper revolution. And my family had to chose to leave the country for all sorts of reasons: safety, education. The country had turned into a religious Islamic country, and that was not congruent with my family's core values in a lot of different ways. So we moved almost abruptly, and I grew up in London, England. And as a 10-year-old, to go from a very warm climate, a warm environment, an environment where you're sort of catered to. Our lifestyle before the revolution in Iran was very comfortable, and then to move into a climate that is damp, cold, and into a tiny apartment was certainly challenging. But I think in retrospect it was phenomenal, because it sort of teaches you adaptability. Now, as a sort of a father of 2 sons, who have a very different childhood than I did in terms of the options open to them. One of the characteristics that I think is very important for the next generation to develop is adaptability. And then in England, I lived there for about 14 years. Talking of adaptability in England, I remember there was a famous boxing match, Jared, between Mike Tyson and a guy called Frank Bruno. And yeah. Mike Tyson knocked out Frank Bruno, I think, in about 3 rounds. And in the post sort of match interview, Frank Bruno was saying, well, I had a plan, but I couldn't sort of implement it. And then after that, Mike Tyson was being interviewed, and he came up with a line that I think is fantastic. And he said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, So a given is that you're going to get punched in the mouth. How you adapt to that and how you go to plan B, C, and D, I think is a characteristic that we all need to develop. Hopefully not all of us need to go through a revolution to do that, but I do want our kids to develop that characteristic.
And you said this was at an age of 10 when you guys moved.
Yeah, age of 10. And I always went to an American school up until then, and I was always more fluent in English than I was in Farsi. But when we moved to England, I couldn't really understand the English because I'd get on a bus to go to school, and the bus conductor would have a Cockney accent and say, "Oh, that's going to be 10 pieces of marblage, please," and I'd be like, "Whoa, what just happened? I thought I could communicate, but I can't." And talking of communication, you said something very nice at the beginning of the podcast. I really appreciate that. I think talking about characteristics that us dentists, I think, need to really develop and have is our ability to communicate clearly. Because basically our patients most of the time are in a need situation, not necessarily in a want situation. But to understand how to communicate clearly, listen effectively, body language. Only about 7% of communication is the words that you use. The rest is sort of tone, volume. You're listening.
Isn't that so interesting? That is so interesting. You would think it'd be heavily weighted to the words you're actually saying. But yeah, I heard somebody say that the other day as well. I don't know exactly what percentage they use, but that's so interesting. That just tells you how you need to think about how you're presenting yourself.
Absolutely. Look at you right now. You're the way that you're listening to me will influence the way that I will speak. The calm that you're creating is going to affect me. And having been in dentistry for 31 years now, longer, 35 years, but 31 years as an endodontist. We will co-regulate energetically, even though we are on different sides of the country right now, and talking through through Zoom or technology.
Yeah.
Your energy will influence me. So if I'm talking to a patient that's scattered and all over the place and anxious, I will immediately, my voice will come down a couple of octaves. The speed with which I will speak will be much slower, and nowadays you have to be careful, but I will really make sure that I will at some point before having treated them touch their shoulder, make sure they know that I sort of establish some sort of a physical connection there to sort of calm them down. And a trick I learned is focus on the left eye. For some reason, apparently, there was some research that I read, is it's difficult to look someone in both eyes. So just really focus on the left eye and lock into the left eye. So
interesting. Now, technical question: their left eye, or like
their left eye,
the left eye that's looking at their left eye? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed to say it. I don't know the exact research behind it, but that was one of the folks who was talking about communication recommended that. So if your listeners want to steal that, and that would be perfect.
That's cool. I'm going to start looking at your left eye of this interview, man, and see if it works. I like that.
So you're going to calm me down further. I'm going to fall asleep. So anyway, yeah, England for about 14 years. I went to dental school there, and then there was only one program in endodontics that I wanted to go to that was headed by really the father of modern endodontics. His name was Herb Schilder, and he headed the program in Boston. And I'll tell you a wee story about this. It was the only program I applied to, and I got an interview on a Wednesday. So I flew from London to Boston, and the order was you were supposed to spend the day in the clinic with the other residents, and then the great Herb Schilder would see you in the afternoon at about 4 o'clock to interview you. So I spent the day with the residents, and then I sit outside of his office, for the interview. He kind of comes, he walks past me, doesn't say anything, goes in his office, and about 5 minutes later, his secretary comes out and says, Dr. Schilder's not going to see you today. And I was shocked.
Well, you're like, why not, man? He just walked by. Like, he doesn't have time?
Why not? And she said, I can't tell you anymore. He's just not going to see you today. No coherent excuse was presented. And I said, I still remember her name, Stacy McNamee, and I said, well, I was really lost. I said, well, what do I do? And she goes, go home. And I said, home is London. She goes, well, you have a flight to catch, So I was just really crestfallen, take the flight back, arrive in London on a Thursday morning, 2 messages on my answering machine. One was my girlfriend, and the second one was Stacy saying, Dr. Schilder will see you tomorrow. So I showered and bought another ticket, flew that afternoon to Boston, and then saw him on Friday. And the first thing I told him was, thank you so much for making time for me, as opposed to, why are you doing this to me? And the interview went well. He accepted me, and later on, he explained that I was the youngest person to have applied to his program, and this was a test to see whether I actually really wanted this or not. To fly transatlantic twice in 1 week was part of the interview. Was part of the
So interesting. What was going through your mind that Wednesday night after he said, or she said, I guess, hey, he's not going to see you, go home? As you're going on that plane back to London, what's going through your head?
What a great question. I was confused about it. I was angry. I was obviously sad. I was like disappointed. I felt disrespected, given the effort, and then I had to sort of take a minute to create some space between that emotion. And this is a useful thing, I think, in dentistry as well. There are a lot of times where you're going to be presented with a stimulus that's really going to urge you to react. And the question is, can you create enough space between stimulus and response so that you can actually respond coherently as opposed to react? And that's sort of the minding the gap, so to speak, or creating the gap between stimulus and response. I mean, how many times, this is directed at your audience, how many times does a patient push us to a limit where we're just like, are you joking? As I've given you everything I can possibly give you, you're still... And in that moment, to try and create, maybe even time yourself out, just say, I'll be right back with you, and give yourself a little bit of space was important. So it was not a good flight back, but the Friday night flight back, I actually got upgraded, and it was the first time I'd seen a sort of business class of a plane, and I was the very obvious upgrade. I drank pretty much whatever there was on the plane, and I was a happy lad. And once the context had been explained to me, I certainly understood it was a very shrewd thing for him to want to do, because he had very limited spots, and I was about 20. I finished dental school at 22 years of age.
22 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he wanted to make sure that this 22, 23-year-old kid is actually serious about wanting
Why dentistry in the first place? What got in your head when you were over in England to go into dentistry?
My parents were both physicians, so healthcare appealed to me. And then, as happens often, a friend of the family, he was a dentist and a tennis player, and he wanted a young kid to play tennis with, and I've always been into tennis, and so I started playing tennis with him over the weekends, and then I started talking with him, and I've always really enjoyed working with my hands, and the manual dexterity really appealed to me. The fact that I could help people, and the fact that in dentistry often the immediacy of the results is really quite gratifying. Someone comes in, especially in endodontics, in pain. You do something, they leave your office relieved, and that's the results are really quite immediate. Different to my world right now, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. So I like the patient interaction, and I just thought this guy was just so cool, and I wanted to be like him. And I think, look, for dentists, and I know that Duckett lad focuses purely on dentistry, so you've met a lot of dentists and different sort of characteristics. Mm-hmm. My older son Cameron's going to go into dentistry, and I'm really very pleased. First of all, the future will present its problems for the next generation with AI, etc. Dentistry is going to be a relatively AI-proof profession. I think it's a profession where you can use the artistic side of your mind. It's a profession where you can really heal people. You can make a difference. and the connectivity can be great. But it's also a profession that is very stressful. It's stressful on your body. We often have to contort ourselves. It's difficult, and you're absorbing energy that isn't sort of relaxed throughout the day, and that energy has to go somewhere. And so you have to, on both physically and mentally, I think it's a challenging profession, unless you have a great team of people around you that encourage you, that give you perspective. And that's one of the other areas that I think your firm is a great firm to have as part of the collaborative team that a dentist would want to have around them. But a good family, great team, that all makes a big difference on your longevity.
I appreciate you saying that. That's probably too. I was saying this to somebody the other day. Before we went dental specific, or maybe once we went dental specific, and we started talking to all these great dental practice owners, two things became very surprising to me that I probably didn't know or wouldn't have known beforehand. And it's two things you just said. One is how, I guess, strenuous, like physically it is, sitting in the chair, working in the chair right beside the patient, and how that messes with your neck and shoulders and all that stuff. I just would never have dreamt like that's a physical job, but it is. And then number two is how much, I guess I'll use the word stress, that dental practice owner is under, because they are the clinician, right? They're their main clinician, if you will, if they're a single doctor deal. But then they also have to wear all these other hats in their business about being a business owner and keeping it running, and how much stress that puts on them. And that's, you said it. I mean, we were talking before we hit record button, but surrounding yourself with people that can tell you the truth. Board of advisors is kind of what we call it. You need those people internally and externally around you. But those two things, beforehand, I wouldn't have thought that was the case, but I see it now that we're in it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you're so articulate about this. Hey, listen, Jared, as dentists, we need to be the finder, the minder, and the grinder. We need to go out there and sort of create the business, whether it's and become familiar with ways of marketing the practice and making sure that we have enough patients to treat. The minder, we need to learn how to lead. We need to learn how to manage a team. We need to learn how to run a business. Now, Jared, I think it is a big mistake that we are training clinicians only to be clinicians, because what happens is dentists are incredibly passionate about what they do. They will take a lot of CE. And here's the thing, educationally, they're in the top 0.29% of the country. So they're definitely book smart. But being book smart and running a business are two very, very different things.
What do you mean they're in the top 0.29 in education? Like intellectually, like how smart they are? Is that what you're saying? Or
I mean, the letle of education that,
I see what you're saying.
Getting is relative to the rest of the country. They're clearly educationally gifted, but for someone to be book smart and educationally gifted is one thing. For someone to be very focused on producing excellent dentistry, is another thing. But then for someone to be able to run a business effectively, to be able to create an environment where this can all occur and deal with that stress is quite something else. And that's why you do need great advisors, because one of the biggest disservices in education is not teaching dentists how to run a business effectively. I went back 5 years ago and got an MBA because I wanted to exercise a different part of my brain. But throughout my career, have you read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Love it. It's one of my top 5 favorite books.
It's one of my favorite books. I would meet with my office manager every week, and the question was, what can we get better at by 1%, by 2%? Because we totally understood. We didn't poo-poo that incremental improvement at something, because the compounding effect of becoming better by 1% a week at just one thing would mean at the end of the year you're 52% better, but the compounding effect of becoming better at 1 or 2% in a lot of different things, is going to be significant. And I, at Chevy Chase Endodontics, we were about a $4.5 million practice, and I got the overhead down to 28%. And I did it not by skimping on anything. This is a big difference between overhead and waste. And we don't really understand that. To invest in technology, to invest in your staff, to create a great environment that you want to be in is terrific. Those are all great expenses. To waste money on sort of outrageous credit card processing fees, or overspending on payroll services, etc., you're not getting much for that. And to be able to distinguish between those two, I think, is very very important. And I feel that our profession has been susceptible to the amalgamation that you see, where private equity comes in and says, you know what, guys, I am the solution to your problem. If you sell your practice to me, you will be able to focus just on the dentistry. And I'm not poo-pooing the idea at all. And it just seems incredibly attractive to do that. And I think if you're towards the end of your career, that it could be a great option. But always know that everything has a cost. There is no such thing as someone coming and giving you millions of dollars and then saying there will be no impact in the way that you're going to be either remunerated or be able to practice, or the choices that you'll be able to make. That's fantasy land, and if something is too good to be true, it often is.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing too, I'll say, like Atomic Habits, like I said, one of my top 5 favorite books. I think, have you read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy?
I have not, but
I will send you a copy of that, or you get it on Audible or whatever. Read that book, and then I think, in my opinion, you take Atomic Habits and combine it with that book, The Compound Effect. That needs to be required reading for every single dentist and every single business owner. I mean, hands down. So jump in a little bit to after dental school, right? You came over, went through dental school there, and then you mentioned your practice, Chevy Chase Endodontics. Like, when did you buy it, and then how long did you run it, or own it, if you will?
Yeah. So when I first came to Washington, D.C. in 1995, I went and I became an associate at a different endodontic practice. And I associated there for about 6 years. And during that time, it was a great learning opportunity to learn. First, you're going from a situation where you're treating 1 or 2 patients a day to a situation where you need to be able to work on your speed. And 2, it gave me an opportunity to learn how I didn't want to run a practice. It gave me an opportunity to learn, to think about what my core values are, what my vision, what my mission is going to be. And it wasn't congruent with the practice I was at. And I felt that I wanted to create my own. So we opened up Chevy Chase Endodontics in 2001. It was a scratch start practice. Practice, specialty practice, completely fee-for-service. I did not participate with any of the insurance plans.
You're going totally against the norms, right? Not totally buying a practice, starting one up, not PPO, fee-for-service.
Yes, I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but I think it is important. I wasn't John Smith, the third generation dentist in Washington, D.C., acquiring and with a network, etc. A funny name. I had to go and knock door to door and try and create a couple of things, which I think is really important for us to talk about. This is not directed necessarily at you, but at your audience. We are not in the tooth business. That's not the business we're in. We're in the trust business. And understanding that we, how do you go about creating enough trust in another dentist for them to want to give you their greatest asset, namely their patient, to treat, and then have the confidence that patient's going to come back to them, treated well, their problem solved, thankful that they were sent there, because how I treat them would be a total reflection of how the restorative, it was the restorative dentist's choice to send them to me. And then this is the other thing, either if you are a specialist, this is important, and if you're not, you should look for this in your specialists. I really made sure that the patients went back to my referring doctors with a different listening to them than before they had been referred. What I mean by that is I really made sure that they knew that that dentist was, in my opinion, amazing for reasons A, B, and C. And I'd be very specific about that so that it didn't just sound like words. Mm-hmm. And two, and this is what your firm does for dentists, I also, even though I was a one-tooth dentist as an endodontist, right, I made sure that I looked at the patient holistically. So my report could say, root canal was completed on tooth number 19, everything patient tolerated the treatment well. Please look at the cracks and the crazed lines in tooth number 18. Patient may benefit, so I'm not dictating, I'm suggesting, from a crown on tooth number 18 as well as 19, so that these cracks don't worsen, so that they will then reduce the chances of them needing another root canal.
Yeah.
I think once you start taking care of people and your referrers and making suggestions that are not in your immediate interest but is in their immediate interest, then good things happen. And that's just the right energy to send out into the world anyway.
Yeah. High level, broad question here. What was the hardest part of practice ownership for you? What was the hardest part, biggest challenge you faced?
In the area that I opened up and the manner, the two challenges. The area that I opened up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, if you pick up a stone and throw it, you're going to hit an endodontist. I mean, I'm not kidding you. There are 7 endodontists within a 5-minute walk from me. It's a very saturated environment. And 2, it's a saturated environment because it's an affluent environment. And in when you're treating affluent people in an affluent environment, then you need to accept that you're going to be treating the most finicky people, on the planet. So I found that being the finder was much more time consuming than it could have been had I made other choices, either geographically or the type of practice. And I found that the absorption of the energy of the patients, especially in an endodontic environment where I'm not giving them a beautiful smile at the end of it, I'm doing something different, was also difficult. But talking of book recommendations, Jared, one of my other all-time favorite books is The E-Myth Dentist by Michael Gerber.
Yeah.
Now, what I got from that book, which I want to share with your audience, is don't go to work in your practice every day. Go to work on your practice. That is what is going to create liberty. Systematize the bejesus out of your practice. Now, to paraphrase the book, these are not my ideas, and I shouldn't present them as if they are. They're Michael Gerber's. Look, Jared, if you walk into McDonald's, in your neck of the woods or my neck of the woods, the fries it's going to taste the same. They're very particular about the potatoes being 23% hydrated. They're very particular about everything having a very clear system. So my advice, which I'm sure your clients hear all the time, is systematize the hell out of your practice so you take the guesswork out of things. There's just a very clear system for doing almost everything, answering the phone, to ordering, to everything you have to has to have a way of doing it.
Agree with that 100%. I was looking over my shoulder. I'm going to do it again. Yeah, top left, right up here, you can kind of see it. E-Myth Dentist. I mean, we're speaking the same language, Dr. Zia. I mean, this
is good.
Yeah, top left, right there. I think right there.
I can't.
Too small, probably.
My eyes, yeah, it's too small for me to pick up some of the other books. But seeing as we're doing like a book recommendation, you asked me, it was such a great question. What are the challenges? I think leading a team is also very, very difficult. So to create a team that is going to be, have the same thoughts and feelings. Now, another great book is by Dan Pink, It's called Drive, and it's the science of motivation. Daniel Pink, Drive, and it's the science of motivation. You'd be, you'd be surprised what really motivates people is way more the idea that they're getting better at something. And the other thing, that I learned from that book is to keep the ratio of positive to negative feedback to about 5-1. So I spent a lot of time in my practice trying to catch some people doing something right, appreciating them for having done something right. It could be like, hey, Seema, I overheard you talk to that patient, when you were giving the post-op report. I thought you really knocked it out of the park. And then get specific about why. The way you were clear about it, the way you really took all of their questions, because what gets appreciated gets repeated. And we're all suckers for the dopamine high of that sort of appreciation. Some would argue that the newer generation is more addicted to it than us, but it's a different conversation for a different podcast. But
yeah. I'm getting all kinds of gold nuggets. My sheet over here, I'm going to recite them here at the end, but my sheet is getting full. What I'm assuming you sold your practice at some point. When was that? And then let's go from that into when you sold your practice. What did you transition into? Because I really want to spend some time talking about what you're doing now.
Thank you. Yeah, I did sell my practice because I had a surgery on my elbow that didn't go as planned. My ulnar nerve got crushed, and it's getting better, and I hope to be back in the clinical saddle at some point. But a few years ago, I'd gone back and gotten an MBA, and my main reason to do that was after 31 years of just doing one thing, I felt that I really needed to exercise a different part of my brain, and I highly encourage that. And also, my kids went to an academically rigorous high school, and they were studying about 3 hours a night. So to stay connected with them, I wanted to study with them at night as opposed to go and watch TV while they're grinding. And that had dividends as well. I have a great relationship with them. So throughout my career, Jared, I've had 2 masters. My patients are my masters, and my referring docs. And as I said, in trying to serve the clinical community, I've had to understand what their pain points are. And the pain points for dentists is this. As we just talked about it, we've gone to dental school, but we don't know exactly how to run a business. And the vendors, the business vendors that are supposed to be taking care of us, know that we are distracted. They know we don't have a lot of time. They know we have a steady stream of income. And what makes me very upset is that very often they treat us dentists as the low-hanging fruit and charge us at their very highest rates. So I created a company called Unify, UNIFI. And the purpose of this company is to help my colleagues. It serves just the clinical community. My wife's a physician, so our main focus, just like your practice, is dentistry. And the main mission is to help our colleagues keep more of what they work so hard to earn. And the way that we do it is really very, very open. Our treatment plan, our process is very similar to a treatment plan or a process that a dentist would have. It's a sort of an honest diagnosis of let's find all of the financial leaks in your practice in credit card processing, cost for payroll, patient financing. Do you have the right HR? Your retirement plan, is it set up and well so that you can maximize your contributions? We take a look at all of that stuff. If you're in a great place, we validate it and at least give you peace of mind. But often we're able to uncover areas where folks are really overspending significantly, especially in the merchant service arena, which is a very murky world. And on average, we're saving our colleagues, I don't call them clients because they're our colleagues, about 30 grand a year by showing them ways of eliminating credit card processing fees, going with payroll companies that are great value, but but B, have a sort of a platform that makes things so efficient that you're not paying someone $30 an hour to do this, and for it to take them hours to do it. So basically, the mission is to help our colleagues, and we do it by improving the business aspect of what they're doing.
And you called that, when we talked previously, you called that maybe like a cost savings analysis, or what did you call that whenever you're kind of going through their P&L, if you will, or where they're paying on certain deals to see?
Yeah, we gather some data, and we do what I call a practice savings checkup.
There you go.
Now, Jared, I went for a physical checkup a couple of months ago, and a rather comprehensive one. And it's something that we do every year at a personal level. It's just become a habit that, of course, you're going to go get a checkup. But, I think it's a good thing to do for our practice as well, in terms of, hey, let's identify where the financial leaks are. And don't poo-poo as we said, James Clear, don't poo-poo a 3% savings, a 4% savings. It compounds over time. And talking of compounding, I could tell someone at practice, hey, we're going to save you $1,000 a month. And I can see the look in their eye. They're like, well, that's like a fancy dinner somewhere, and I'm doing so well that $1,000 a month isn't going to move the needle. But then I ask them, listen, how would you feel if the first year of college was free for your kid? And they're like, oh, that would be compelling.
Sounds good to me, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, you save $1,000 a month for 5 years at a 6% return. That's $72,000. That's congratulations. That's first year of college free. And I want our colleagues, and I know that you're the people who are with you understand this. Understand the power of compounding and the effect that it can have at the end of it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we shot a video literally just the other day, Caleb on our team and I, and we always talk about the power of 1%, which is what you're saying. And it's when you're looking at, and what I mean by the power of 1%, I'm going to use easy math here. Let's use that $1 million dental practice, right? 1% in that dental practice is $10,000. And so when you're looking at that stuff and you're looking at percentages on a profit and loss statement, et cetera, and it's like, well, maybe my supply cost is at 9% and I need to get it down to 6. Well, that's 3 percentage points. Like, well, that's not that much, is what that dental practice owner's thinking. I'm like, no. The power of 1%. That's $30,000, right? And then also, I was talking to a group. It was a group the other day. It was a larger group. Let's say top line was fairly significant, 15 million or so top line. The power of the 1% there, I can't do math very well in my head, but I think that's $150,000.
$150K, yep.
So think about 3 points there. That's $450,000, right? But then not also just on what you just said is so perfect. Not also just on a 1-year deal on cash flow, but that should be cash flow every year. But then also, right, dental practices a lot of times, I'm not saying everybody out there has to sell their dental practice, but at some point you're going to transition on, and usually that dental practice is based on a factor of collections or an EBIT valuation, and so that valuation is going to increase the lower your overhead is. So what you're doing at Unify, decreasing overhead on those certain deals is really money, time, and it's just going to be cash flow, and valuation of your practice is going to go up because of it.
Absolutely. It'll have an effect on the valuation. Now, let's say your practice that doesn't have a CBCT unit, 3D imaging.
Yep.
Which is becoming more and more as part of the standard of care, as I think it should, as sort of the efficiency of reducing the radiation comes down. We're three-dimensional things, and we're looking at three-dimensional teeth, and for us to have all the information is important. So let's say you save $1,000 a month by lowering your credit card processing fees, something you don't get any value, and you redirect that $1,000 a month into acquiring a piece of technology that A, is going to make your treatment more predictable. If you're an endodontist, for sure it's going to make your treatment more predictable. And B, it's going to then generate its own line item in terms of income. That's a good way of thinking about either saving that money or redirecting it in a way that is generative and improves the standard of care that you're providing. And I think that's a really healthy mindset, which will pay dividends over a sort of medium long-term career.
Yeah. And that's like almost like the opportunity cost, right? It's like, well, what are you not able to do because you're paying this over here and redirecting those funds and getting more value? Maybe a tactical question here, Dr. Zia, but like, is there like a monthly fee that they pay for Unify, or are you comfortable talking about how that works here, or how's that work?
Yeah, every practice who's interested in Unify starts with the practice savings checkup.
Yep.
We look at just it's not an overwhelming amount of data. We look at their credit card processing fees, what payroll they're with, all that stuff. The whole thing takes about 20 minutes. It's not that big a deal. If we're a good fit, and then we go away and we really look at things with a fine-tooth comb. And we come back and we tell them, hey, this is where you're at. And by the way, where you're at could be amazing. Let's celebrate that and validate that for you. We're not here to pitch and sell. Or we say, you're great in this area and this area and this area. You're really leaving a lot of money on the table here. This is where you're at, and this is where you could be at. So we prescribe clearly. And then when it comes to implementing, I know that the number one barrier is time and dedicating staff. So we do all of the heavy lifting in terms of doing that. Now, we have also a lot of great educational programs. There are about 7 great lectures here in the fall. If someone wants to take part in those educational lectures, either live or online, there's going to be a small sort of monthly fee to be able to do that. Other than that, there is no fee to do this. And I did it this way because, Jared, I've been in the saddle for 31 years. Everyone wants to get you on a sort of a monthly recurring sort of a revenue.
Sure.
I don't want to do that. I want to say, look, if you're good, you're good. Congratulations. And if you're not, let's improve it. And we provide all of these services. So if we were to take something on, it'll be a win-win. It'll be a win-win situation where the dentist is saving money, and we will have a small margin to make on it as well. That's how we get paid, not by the dentist paying us.
Yeah. What? Yeah, it's a great deal. Was it harder building a dental practice, or was it harder building Unify, or equal?
My colleagues are as I said, incredibly smart, but they're also incredibly busy and incredibly skeptical, and have been on the receiving end of a lot of smoke and mirrors. So to create a company like Unify that is there to really serve them honestly and clearly, to get that message across it isn't always immediate. It takes a while to do. I think both have been heavy lifts, but both have been really gratifying and really worthwhile. But you bring up a point that I want to make that I think is important and useful for folks. You should always overestimate how much effort something is going to take. You should always overestimate how long something is going to take. You should plan for the worst, hope for the best, and I think in either situation we need to be tenacious. We need to be not just adaptable, but also keep getting up. Make sure you're doing the right thing. Make sure you have a good vision and mission, and you know what your why is. Last book recommendation: Start with Your Why by Simon Sinek. He did it. Actually, just watched the TED Talk. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Know what your why is, and keep every day just chip away at it, and keep getting up.
That is so funny. Dr. Zia, we've only met one time before this podcast episode, if I'm correct in that. It is just so funny how much we're aligned on book recommendations, philosophies. I'll even use the words core values. The Simon Sinek Start With Why. We saw him present one time at a conference. And that literally changed the trajectory of our firm in regard to, we used to be a generalist CPA firm, right? Nothing against that. But what we decided is that we needed to specialize in something, and specialize in something that fired us up and allowed us to do work where we could see where we were adding value to people, not just preparing tax returns and doing compliance stuff. And so that TED Talk you referred to, I think it's only like 20 minutes long. And he talks about the golden circle, right? I believe, and he uses Apple, I think, as an example and that sort of thing. If you haven't listened to or read or watched that TED Talk, like you just said, it's a must. I'm going to even put it in the show notes here. It's so powerful, so simple, yet so powerful. But the simple things are the easy things to overlook. So
absolutely, any given dentist is going to look at your team, and the golden circle. It's what, how, why. What, how, why. So from the outside in, and most people on your team know what you do, and even a smaller percentage know exactly how to do it. But a fairly small percentage know why you're doing what you're doing. And what Simon says, and I think you're going to put it in the book, is that don't go from the outside in. Start with the why, where the clarity of why you're doing what you're doing is something as a leader you've been able to articulate in a way that sort of is going to fuel commitment versus just compliance. And all the great companies like Apple, all the great communicators operate and communicate from the inside out. Why, and then the how, and then the what. And I know we're running over time, but I'll share
perfect.
one last thing. The way I would communicate with a patient, it would be, we always pick on Mrs. Smith. Okay, Mrs. Smith.
There's a lot of Mrs. Smiths out there, right?
You have an infection in your upper jaw that's pressing up against your sinus. I can see from the CBCT that the sinus has reacted, and this infection is being fueled by bacteria that's in the root canal system of your tooth, in the roots of your tooth. There are millions of bugs in there at the moment that are fueling this infection. If I can clean those bugs out thoroughly, then that'll be good for the tooth, it'll be good for the jaw, and it'll be good for your overall health. And I've seen the sinus always resolving after that sort of situation. And then you're quiet, and they're like, is that a root canal? And I'm like, yes, we can call it a martini or root canal, whatever you want, but that's what it is. So in so doing, if I had just started saying, Mrs. Smith, you need a root canal.
The what, right?
The what,
yep.
Right, and I'm going to be using GenoWave or lasers to do it. The how, right? Multi-acoustic streaming or laser energy to do it, and never really addressing the why, then I would have left the patient in a different place. And certainly value is not real, it's perceived. So the patient's perceived value of what you're doing is much higher if they know the why of it, as opposed to just the what and the how.
That is so good. If you guys rewind this and listen to the last minute and a half of what he just said, it is so good. Man, I could sit here and talk to you forever, to be honest with you. I mean, real quick, I'm just going to jot down these little notes. Again, I don't know why. I just take notes during this because I always want to get better. I always want to learn, right? I could go back and listen to this on my own time, which I do sometimes, and I'm like, man, that host is terrible. But, I mean, just look at these notes. Like,
host is amazing.
So many just tips here, right? I'm just going to jot these down. 7%, right? 7% of the things that you say, the words matter 7% of it. Everything else, the other 93%, is tone, how you say it, body language. So brilliant. Look at the left eye, right? The one thing you said that's really big to me is find a way to, I think you said it this way, separate or create a gap between the stimulus and the response. Because if there is no gap and they're so close together, who knows what's going to happen. 5-to-1 on positive to negative, right? It's so easy for us as business owners to find what our team is doing wrong, what is negative. Flip it. Find the things they're doing well. It's so brilliant. Always overestimate how much work it's going to take, right? Hope for the best. Start with why. I mean, that's brilliant. Let's end it with this, if you don't mind. What is firing you up right now? What is actually, go back to what you said about drive in I think it was Daniel Pink you said. What is giving you that motivation? What's firing you up? And then end it like, how can people reach out to you and learn more about Unify?
Look, I'm not doing Unify because I needed to retire. That all of the effect of what we've talked about, the compounding effect of understanding revenue, expenses, creating successful practices. I'm doing this to help my colleagues. I find it incredibly gratifying. A lot of us are under a lot of pressure, not just the physical and the emotional pressure of being a dentist, but also the business stresses of running a successful practice. I've served the dental community by treating the patients for, here in the DMV area for 31 years, and I've had a positive effect that way. If I can have a positive effect and send that energy out where, I'm going to look at a practice and I'm going to put them in a better place than they were, not just by saving money, but also saving them some stress and saving them some time. I love sending that energy out. My oldest son is going to become a dentist, and what I find gratifying, Jared, is I've created a company that I wish I had throughout my 31-year career. And this, folks that are providing the level of honesty, the level of clarity, the level of transparency, and the level of, hey, I'm your partner in getting this done. I'm not going to just sell you a solution and then say sayonara. I know how hard it is. Let me work with your office manager to, for example, implement this new payroll service that's going to save you so much time. So that's my why, and I find that really gratifying.
Love it. How come people reach out to you? We'll put it all in the show notes here too. But how can people get in touch?
Well, thank you so much. We've worked hard to create a website that's going to be informative. The URL of which is www.myunify with an I, so myunifi.care, as opposed to .com. And yes, that was intentional because we hope to be serving you with care, and we're also helping the healthcare community.
I love it. You guys remember, I think when I started this, I said he's just a great communicator. I think you guys just all agree. I mean, we could sit here and I could sit here and talk all day with you and listen to you get a lot of wisdom. I lied. I'm going to ask one more question. You use the analogy of the Mike Tyson fight, right? And the great quote that came out of that, like everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Go back to that plane flight over, to Boston, right? And on that Wednesday night, and you got, I'll just say, punched in the mouth a little bit, right? You were trying to meet, and they said, no, we're not going to meet right now. And you could have easily said, you know what? I'm not going to go back when they called and said, and what if they do it again? What would have changed if you got punched in the mouth? What would have changed if you did something differently as opposed to, fly back over on that Thursday? What would that have even looked like? Have you sat and thought about that?
I have. I think life would have been different in terms of my career, who I would have met to marry, my life in general, where I would have ended up, living, and so I'm just going to throw one more book recommendation out there for you. Ryan Holiday is in Texas, and he's written many good books, one of which is called Ego is the Enemy. And yes, on that flight I could have said, the hell with this is disrespectful, I'm not going to participate in this, and but I was sort of really thought about it in terms of my why and what I wanted and why I wanted this particular program, and I needed to just stay focused on that, and say, okay, this is harder. That we talked about this. This is going to take longer than I thought. It's going to be harder than I thought. But it's a worthwhile thing. So kept my eye on the why. I won't lie to you. I was pretty pissed off, to be honest with you. But
I would have been pissed off too.
Yeah,
Maybe pissed off enough to be like, you know what, I'm not coming back.
yeah.
I probably need to do a better job of creating a bigger gap between my stimulus and response, right?
Yes, but I think the ego is, I think now at 57, 58, I certainly do understand the ego, and which part of me is telling me to act a particular way? Is my amygdala in full flight? Is this a flight or fight response? Is this sort of my self-image, the Dr. Zia that, has he somehow been offended? Or will I have the humility to be able to keep my eye on the project and keep going? And I think I'd like to tell my kids to, hey, keep getting up, know your why, and it's okay. It's okay. You're not that special. It's it's okay.
Absolutely love it. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I hope everybody out there
I hope we
has
can do
too.
another one. I really appreciate everything you're doing for the dental community as well. I think the way you go about things is brilliant. Thank you for having me on. It's been a great honor, and I certainly hope that we'll be able to work together and help our colleagues out.
Definitely. We'll take you up on that offer. We'll have you back on the podcast. I'm sure you're going to be a fan favorite. Awesome.
All the best.
Appreciate it, Dr. Zia.
Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.
See ya.